Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
If you're beginning to forget things more commonly than usual, and you're having trouble learning something new, if you're losing your train of thought during a conversation, it may be related to that age-associated drop in a very important brain chemical. It's a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. Hi, my name is Jerry Hickey. I'm a pharmacist who also has studied nutrition. I'm over here at Invite Health. I'm also the scientific director, and I'd like to talk to you today about the effects of acetylcholine on the brain and how it's so important to restore acetylcholine levels as effectively and efficiently as you can with aging, and some natural ways that you can really help achieve that. So welcome to my episode, How to Improve Acetylcholine for Memory. Please subscribe to the Invite Health podcast and please leave us a review. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Invite Health. All of the information on today's episode will be linked in the episode description, and you can visit invitehealth.com/podcast for more information. So let's get going. Acetylcholine is produced naturally in your brain. I mean, it works in the body too. It's involved with muscle function, etc., heart function, etc., but we're only focusing on the brain right now, because acetylcholine is core to forming memories, to learning, to remember. And acetylcholine has a natural decline with age, and it leads to that age-related forgetfulness. We call it subjective memory loss. It's kind of like you're forgetting something and you say it to your significant other and they go, "Oh, no, you're not. You're fine." Well, that's subjective memory loss. You know you're forgetting things, like you took your car keys and you took your wallet, but you left behind that 10% off coupon that you wanted to bring with you. That's subjective memory loss, and it's tied into a drop of acetylcholine. So it's that little bit of absent-mindedness, that little bit of forgetfulness, like you're having a conversation and all of a sudden you lose your train of thought. It's okay. It's not Alzheimer's. But of course, in Alzheimer's, the drop in acetylcholine is severe. In fact, they try to give Alzheimer's patients drugs to bring back acetylcholine, and they do much better. Unfortunately, it's temporary. So acetylcholine is needed for more than just learning and remembering. You use it for problem solving. For instance, you get off the highway at the wrong exit. You want to figure out how to get back on. Acetylcholine is important for that. It's important for logical reasoning. It's important for focusing on something and how long you can concentrate, your attention span. But acetylcholine is also needed for other important functions in the brain. They're still unraveling all the benefits of acetylcholine in the brain. It's involved with, in the back of the brain, with movement and balance and muscle function, and in the front of the brain with learning and memory and problem solving and logic. But it's also somehow involved with nerve growth factor and also brain-derived neurotrophic factor. These are core to maintaining your memory well into old age, like being a super-ager. Super-agers are people that are well into their 80s and 90s and their memory is functioning very well and they're just getting along well and they're happier. Their mood is, they have this sense of well-being. So acetylcholine is linked with the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor and nerve growth factor. So let me tell you what those are. Nerve growth factor is needed for the survival of nerve cells, but also brain cells, and also for the growth of nerve cells and brain cells. Where brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which does have effects in the body, is very core to creating memory cells, and let's explain that very quickly. About 10 years ago, I couldn't have had this conversation with you because we didn't know. Now we know when young, healthy people go to sleep at night and they go into very deep sleep, they release brain-derived neurotrophic factor in abundance. And this creates 600, 700 new memory cells every night, which might not sound like a lot, but by the time they're 50, they've replaced all of their original memory cells. Because you lose memory cells every day, you're supposed to replace them at night. The problem is in your 50s and beyond, we don't know exactly at what age it starts to drop, but certainly by your 50s and beyond, you're releasing less and less brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So restoring acetylcholine somehow interacts with the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor and also nerve growth factor. So it's at the core of not just having a memory and learning and focusing and paying attention and logic and problem solving, but it's also involved with repairing the brain at night and ongoing good memory functions. There's also some level of evidence that acetylcholine is needed to regulate our sleep-awake cycle. And it's needed to prevent mental decay. That's really important. When you learn something now, it gets stored in a temporary site called the hippocampus. The hippocampus is core, central to memory. So you learn something now, it's stored today in your hippocampus. At night, at the end of your nerves, these dendritic spikes have flares, and they're moving the memories out of your hippocampus into the long-term storage sites for your memory. This happens in REM sleep, rapid eye movement. So that's why it's so important to sleep enough, 7 or 8 hours a night, especially for older people. So we go through these various cycles. The REM cycle, you're storing memories, so that's when true learning takes place. And the deep sleep, the delta wave sleep, that's when you're healing the brain and creating new memory cells. So you have to go, sleep is a cycle. You have to go through that cycle multiple times per night to maintain a healthy brain. So when you go into REM sleep, you move the memories out of your hippocampus, a temporary storage site, which is somewhat vulnerable to memory loss. You move it into the long-term memory sites. And if you don't do that, the next day your hippocampus is somewhat filled up and it's hard to learn something new. Plus you forget what you learned the day before because you didn't store it in the long-term memory sites. So acetylcholine is involved with that also. It's involved with our sleep and awake cycles. So how do you restore acetylcholine? Well, you can't swallow it. Now, it's made out of choline. Choline is a water-soluble B vitamin. But regular choline, it's hard to get into the brain, and it's not in the best foods. It is in egg yolks, and you do get some in fish, like when you eat salmon. But a lot of the sources of choline are like organ meats, so people are not eating liver and kidneys for certain reasons, which I agree with. So, and the choline used in most multivitamins and B complexes, it doesn't get into the brain very effectively. Now, that doesn't mean it's not good, because choline is needed for your nerve health, it's needed for your muscles, and it's needed for liver health. So the form of choline that really gets into the brain, because it's the basis of creating acetylcholine, is phosphatidylcholine. Now, you get some phosphatidylcholine in legumes, so beans and peas, etc. But you get a lot in krill oil. Krill is a little crustacean. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny relative of shrimp. And when we get krill, we get from a very clean, sustainable fishery in Antarctica. I mean, the water is pristine. It's the most common life form on the planet, by the way. Krill is the number one life form on the planet. Where the krill fisheries are, the ocean is covered in red because of the krill. The krill, what makes it red? Well, the fish oils, the phosphatides to a degree, the astaxanthin content, the choline content, they make it look red. So when you take krill, or if you could get phosphatidylcholine from a legume, the phosphatidylcholine readily enters your brain. The phosphatides are really important. They help maintain the structure of your brain to help prevent brain decay, and they're needed for the proper release of neurotransmitters in the correct fashion, in the correct order. So they're very important for your brain. But it's the choline that's really important for your memory. Truly, truly, unbelievably important. Now, 90% of Americans do not get sufficient choline in their diet. So when you get krill, you get phosphatidylcholine that readily enters the brain. You also get the fish oils because the fish oils are attached to the phosphatidylcholine. And the choline is released And then you take a product called Alcar. Alcar is acetyl L-carnitine. It has an acetyl group. An acetyl group is basically a carbon with hydrogens and oxygen attached to it. So the acetyl group from the Alcar attaches to the choline released from the phosphatidylcholine from the krill, and that helps you reestablish your acetylcholine. So Alcar is a supplement I've been using myself for years. It gets into the brain easier if you take it away from food. I'll tell you why. Normally when you eat meals, you release insulin to pack away the excess sugar, but insulin shoves a large neutral amino acid into the brain called L-tryptophan. There's a reason for that. L-tryptophan is converted into serotonin, and serotonin makes you feel full. So if you don't have tryptophan in your brain, you're always hungry. But the tryptophan will block the absorption of the Alcar into the brain partially. It'll partially block it. So if you take the Alcar away from food, it gets into the brain more efficiently. So here's what I tell people to do for their memory. Take 2 or 3 krill oil capsules with your breakfast to get all that choline and all that phosphatidylcholine and the astaxanthin and the fish oils into your brain. And then take 2 Alcar with ALA 2 hours after breakfast. Because you already have the phosphatidylcholine delivered into the brain, and it's going to last in there for a while. Then the Alcar and the ALA, they work really well together for brain energy and for brain metabolism, etc. Will release the acetyl group, and you'll make acetylcholine, and it's very good for your memory because acetylcholine helps prevent memory loss. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There's an association between a drop in acetylcholine and subjective memory loss that anybody can have. That's that normal everyday forgetfulness. But it's also connected to mild cognitive impairment. That's where the brain is starting to shrink and you're really having problems understanding complex instructions. For instance, you buy a new car and you can't figure out the GPS, or you get a new Apple iPhone and you can't figure out how to use the phone, how to download apps, etc. That's subjective memory loss. The problem with that is they basically float into Alzheimer's disease. And in Alzheimer's disease, there's basically no acetylcholine. So you need the acetylcholine. It helps prevent memory loss. It improves your attention and your focus. For some reason, it's involved with your sleep cycle. Plus, it helps regulate the release of nerve growth factor and brain-derived neurotrophic factor for healing, regulating, and maintaining your memory. So to me, the easiest, safest, best way to make your acetylcholine restored in your brain if you're starting to have a little bit of a memory issue, take the Alcar with ALA, take the krill oil, and it's very safe. They're very safe supplements. So thank you for tuning into the Invite Health podcast. You can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts, or visit invitehealth.com/podcast. Please subscribe and please leave us a review. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health. Hope to see you next time on another episode of the Invite Health podcast, and thank you so much for listening. Jerry Hickey signing off.